stories like crazy, because everyone has mental health and everyone has a story, and sometimes they're crazy. Join Lori Lane Murphy and me, Adriana Prosser, as we talk about dealing with, struggling with, and managing mental health with storytellers who want to share their true life story. Get in the conversation with us and talk to us on Facebook and Twitter, and subscribe on YouTube. Now, let's smash some stigma. This week we talked to Melanie, who, well, have you ever heard of the saying, don't sweat the small stuff? Well, that's all she sweats. In fact, the big stuff is just too big. Here, let's listen to her story.
First of all, I guess I'll say I don't really know what I'm dealing with mental health wise officially. I've never been diagnosed with anything. I haven't really looked too far into it because I'm pretty high functioning, but I also know like something's going on. I make a joke. I do stand up comedy, and I make a joke in my stand up that I've diagnosed myself as a narcissist with anxiety. Because I think I'm incredibly charming, attractive, talented, deserving of so much praise. I just don't think anyone else thinks that about me. So, one of the things I've started noticing about myself, and I'll tell you a little story about, is I overthink the little things and I glaze over the big things. I always thought, well, okay, when something really big happens, I'll react to it properly, but I just don't know how. Like, it's too much to take in. I used to watch that teen movie, Save the Last Dance, the one where Julia Stiles, she's like a stuck-up ballerina until she loses her virginity and hears a DMX song for the first time. And there's this part in that movie where they do like her mom's totally dead montage, and the county sheriff comes to tell her that her mom's totally dead, and she does the meme thing where she takes a couple graceful dancer steps forward, and then she falls to the ground in the sheriff's arms weeping, and like, oh, like I've always wanted to react to something like that, but when I found out that my mom was diagnosed with cancer, it was just like, okay, like I'm already sitting down. Like, how am I supposed to? What movie are we in? Is my question. First of all, we're in a mall food court because, of course, that's where all the stories are. And all I remember is there was this guy, and he had one of those walks where you think of like tuba sounds, like doopity doopity. And he was walking along, and he had this big tub of Cheetos under both arms, like two tubs of Cheetos, one under each arm. And I was just looking at him like, can I be in that guy's movie? Like, I know how to navigate his world. But my mom had cancer, but that's not what she died of because she's a saucy minx. So this was a few years later. I was in Toronto. She was in Winnipeg. She's been cancer free 5 years. We talk all the time. She got sick. She seemed okay. And then she had a stroke. And when I found out about the stroke, I was worried, but I was also pretty concerned about my job at the sandwich shop because, of course, I was. We were getting busier and busier, and I'm not the best multitasker. I can either be a smiling customer service banter bot, or I can make sandwiches, but doing multiple times as a line forms out the door, like I can't handle it. I was starting to have panic attacks at work over things like efficient use of saran wrap. So I was in a situation where my mom had a stroke, but I was practicing my saran wrap technique, and it didn't feel like a big deal that my mom was sick because nothing was ever a big deal with my mom. Like, her cancer diagnosis years earlier was kind of fun. Like, it was time off work. It was visits to the hospital Starbucks. I'm like, we loved Starbucks. We had an inside joke about Starbucks. So whenever there's holidays and things are closed, Starbucks is always packed full of all these lost souls looking for some place to spend their money. And we used to look at them through the windows and say things like, "Oh, we can always go to Starbucks. There's always Starbucks." Like, we'd mock them, and then we'd go to Starbucks. So I had no reason to think that recovering from a stroke would be any different from her. I was like, hospital, Starbucks, and we'll move on. But then one day after our particularly rough shift at the sandwich shop, my sister called. Mom's not getting better. She's completely lost brain activity on one side, and the other side is coming along. And I had to fly to Winnipeg as soon as possible. And it was not like the movies. I was very upset. I was very distraught. But I knew what to do. Like, I called WestJet. I took a shit. I packed my bags. Like, I packed my bags to go watch my mother die in Winnipeg of all places. And it was weird. Like, I thought I'd be like tossing things in a bag all crazy while things went all blurry, like in the movies. But I was alarmingly and frustratingly pragmatic. I was not having a panic attack. It's not like anyone's going to lose out on a good sandwich because of this. And I packed a good amount of socks and underwear. I thought, wow, good thing we just did laundry. Then I got mad at myself for being so stupid plucky over something like that. But like actually it was a really good thing that we just did laundry. And I thought all the same thoughts I always think when I get ready to go for a trip. Like, should I pack a bathing suit? Then I was like, oh, that's so stupid. Who could swim at a time like this? Then I thought, no, she'd want me to swim. And grief, I just think grief is so weird. People talk like it changes everything and like it takes over everything. But for me, it didn't change anything. It just added to it. Like grief to me is like cornstarch. Like you can feel happiness and horniness and hungriness and all those feelings. And grief just kind of like thickens it. It's a thickening agent. So I got to Winnipeg and I spent that night at my uncle's house. And in the morning, I went to the hospital. And like, okay, watching someone die is very weird. Like I regularly cancel plans for things that I really want to go to, but this I was compelled to do. Like I can't miss it. And it was weird. Yeah, so I stood there and I sang to her and I touched her hair and I told her if she becomes a ghost, it's okay if she wants to haunt me. If she is that something she wants to do? I won't get mad. Um, and she wasn't like there really, but I think she heard me on some level. And then I went to the hospital Starbucks. I got a matcha latte with almond milk, half sweet, extra matcha. That's her drink, and I drank it. And I emailed. I quit the sandwich shop,
Hmm.
and that's my story.
Wow. I'm just like, I want to laugh. Like,
Yeah, that's okay. I wrote it through like.
first of all, you wove taking a shit into your grief story.
Well, I did.
Which is
It was like
key.
the first thing I was like, oh, people are always so stoic and beautiful about death. I'm like, oh, and how could I at the time like this, as if your body stops functioning. And that made me so angry because like I was on the phone with I was on hold with WestJet, and I was like, I have to take a shit. Like I can't change these things. So it was so like, not romantic. Like you want, like I was really close with my mom, and you want that whole situation to be something different than it's not. But you still like, I don't know, you still stop at the Tim Hortons and get a bagel or something because you're still everything is still present. Like I don't know, you don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no like the time stands still. Like it's just not. It's
You
not what
still have bodily functions. Like you still
exactly.
have to do stuff, because I can relate to so much of what you're saying when you were saying earlier about like you overthink the little things like to the point of the ridiculous, but then you kind of gloss over the big ones. And I
Yeah.
always think it's amazing how much stronger you end up being when you think that there's no way you'd be able to handle something that big.
Absolutely.
Right. I'm thinking when my dad was ill and he went into a coma, and we were kind of waiting also for him to pass. And I was with him when he passed. And I thought, just like you, that there would be, I don't know, angels, or there would be a big swell of orchestra music Like the
Mm-hmm.
moment that he stopped, he took his last breath, there was going to be, oh, or something. And nothing happened. It just,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and,
Yeah.
and you somehow, and then you've got to get up and then you've got to talk to the doctor and then you have to get your stuff and it's amazing how strong we are when we think for sure that's the time we're going to fall apart.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's what was so weird was I could not handle this sandwich shop
Yep.
gig at all. It was so
The
stressful.
saran wrap was killing you.
Yeah. I'm not an efficient person. And I was trying so hard because I did really like it there, but it was it was the height of summer. It was July of last year. So it was like we're going from sleepy winter cafe, neighborhood cafe to like very busy sandwich shop. And it was so stressful to me to handle that multitasking. And I could not handle, I had to quit that job. Like I could not handle it. It wasn't for me. And yet this big thing that happened, and like you said, like the moment, I think the more beautiful spiritual moments I had around my mom's death were not the expected ones. Like you said, there's no like orchestra the
Yep.
moment it happens, but then you might be like taking a walk and see a really pretty tree, and
Mhm.
out of nowhere you're like, oh, I'm having a moment. And like I think it's always been the unexpected little things for me where I feel deep emotions, and the big it's like the big moments are too big, like they can never possibly, like I can't react to them.
Hmm.
I get that.
I know
I
what you're
totally
saying.
get that. Yeah. I
Yeah.
totally get that. As somebody who lives with anxiety and like you're at a certain vibration level, that other things that you should be over the top for, like there's just no capacity to worry more. So there's like almost like a system shutdown, like there's a cap, and you're
Yeah.
just like, okay, well, now we're numb and
Yeah.
and I need me my Starbucks.
Yeah, exactly. I've never thought of it that way before, but it's true. Like you have you've already felt so anxious over something so small that you're like, well, I can't go bigger. So you just like,
It's not possible. It's not physically possible sometimes. And then somebody drops a really big, bomb in your lap and you go,
mhm,
fine,
yeah,
put it in the queue, you know?
yeah. I
Yeah.
felt the same way. Like I've had people tell me really big news before, and then like a couple seconds later, they're like, did you hear me? Like, are you processing this? And I'm just like, yeah, like, and I think it must be so confusing for them because like, yeah, like I'll worry over such small things, but like, yeah, in high school, I remember my vice principal taking me aside and being like, you're so bad at math. You're really bad at it. And you might not graduate. Like, we have to figure something out. And I was just like, okay. Like, if I don't, I guess. Like, it really did not. And it's not, I don't know, like with a situation like that, sometimes people are like, oh, it bothers you so much that you're going into denial. And I'm like, no, I honestly feel nothing. Like, I don't
Mhm.
feel anything. And and you know that you should, which makes it kind of
Do you ever feel
worse.
bad about that? Do you ever, because when you're like, oh God, I don't, it's not that I don't feel anxious. I feel bad that I don't feel anxious, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and then
Yeah.
you're almost beating yourself up for not reacting stronger in a more stronger, that's
Yes.
bad grammar, more strongly.
Yeah,
I
there's
mean,
an
it's
incredible amount of guilt there. And then that's
Yeah.
something I can get anxious about is the guilt for sure.
Yeah.
The actual event, no. But yeah, I think it's also like as artists, my friend list is full of all these beautiful, sensitive souls who have so much to say about, when they're having a hard time. I have a lot of friends. I'm lucky to have a lot of friends who are really open and really candid about those things. But I see them feeling uh, these deep, horrible seeming feelings. And then when I go through something, I'm like, I don't feel that way. Like I read it and I don't relate to it. And it's like, it's a guilt, and it's also I think a bit of a yearning to relate to people who have those the big emotions over the big things.
Yeah.
It's like you're talking about the movies, right? And you're saying,
Mm.
I wish I could react like that. And I think that it's that stereotype of the person who cries and wails at a funeral, and then you show up and you're like, all right, that's cool.
Yeah.
And like completely check out and numb out, and that feeling of I should be doing this. I should be feeling this way because movies and books and stuff like that. And I think that that's something we are all kind of trying to fight, the stigma of like how people should act and like what normal looks like. And I think that this is a big part of that, of like, I can't, I'm shutting down. I can't. And that is also like, what is the ramble that I'm trying to get to here is the, you know, that like fight, flight. What is it?
Yeah.
Fight, flight.
Fight, flight, fawn.
Fight, flight. Which one?
I heard fawn recently, that some people go into a fawning mode where they, yeah.
Oh, I haven't heard that, because I've heard now fight, flee, like that you can do fight or flight, and that was like the two big ones or something. And now that there's like freeze,
shut down in there, right? Fight,
the freeze, yeah, that we just freeze, we just stop, we numb out, can't do it, no forward movement. And I didn't know of that one growing up, but I totally did that. And I think it's nice to hear from other people who are just like,
we're not monsters. We are not monsters.
Yeah. And the like that book that came out that was like, don't sweat the small stuff. And I'm like, screw you. That's all I worry about.
Yeah, exactly.
Saran wrap.
Yeah. Give me the big stuff, the small stuff. Yeah, I know. I think I'll bet you there's going to be people listening to this that know exactly what we're talking about, especially if you live with chronic anxiety, because that's really what sweating the small stuff is. It's living within your anxiety all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, and probably everyone I know has anxiety at that level, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
Except maybe my husband, who's sort of dead inside. But
Love you, Paul.
other than that,
yeah, I think
it's a really relatable topic.
Yeah, I think I think I know a lot of people who are like that too, in that with stand-up comedy or storytelling or writing in general, you are always examining and observing, and that kind of forces you to sweat the small stuff in a way. Or maybe it's like, I don't know if it's a chicken egg thing, maybe because you overthought everything, that's what made you a good writer and that's what drew you to that in the first place. Or because you want your writing to be good, you start focusing on all these really small moments and seeing what you can pull from those. But either way, yeah, I do. I do know a lot of people, but then I did feel, and it might have been like, I don't really know what reality was at that time, but I did feel kind of like an alien, in the sense that like people would come up to me and be like, "Oh my God, I was so sorry to hear." And I'm like, "Yes, thank you." And like, I'm trying to be appropriately like the appropriate griever in that moment, and make the right faces and because it's like, I am feeling this stuff and I am really sad, and it is a profound loss I'm still feeling and dealing with. But yeah, I did feel a little like outside of reality, or like I don't know how to give people what they need from me right now, like, because it's like they needed me to be a certain way in order to know how to interact with me. Because if you're like the typical griever, they can be like, "Oh my gosh, if you ever need anything," and and you can go into your spiel, which is the supportive spiel we give to everyone. But if someone's just kind of calmly like, "Yes, I'm very sad, thank you," like, it's just, we don't know how to deal with that as much. And like, it got to a point, I was in Winnipeg, and like, it's such a small community. I knew so many people there, but not everyone knew what had happened. So I would run into people and they'd be like, "Why are you in town?" And like, I was like, "Ugh, like I don't want to tell this person, not because it's going to make me too sad to tell them, but because then I'm watching them try and figure out how to react, and I'm trying to figure out how to react, and it's just taxing.
I found that too in my grief, that the head tilt sympathy. I got to a point where I'm like, I don't need to hold your hand through my grief.
Yes.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
Come on. Like and as soon as you could see it in their eyes, like there was something that just kind of went, oh, and like there was this distancing, and like their body reacted, and then they did their head tilt, like they literally tilted their head and went, oh, like that lip smack of the, oh,
yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, I bet you are. But also, what's happening right now in the next few seconds is you needing me to be performing my grief for you so that you can feel like you've been there for me. When bitch girl, step off and let me just like, can we just not? Can I just have space rather than me filling your time to like, I don't know. It felt performative. I definitely hear that. Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry.
No, sorry. Go ahead, Melanie.
I just wanted to, that's so true. And I've written some stand-up comedy about this whole experience, and I like performing it while I'm on stage because it's great to get reactions to these things that have been hard for me and work through them in that way. But it's also afterward, people always are like, oh, you're so brave. And like they see me smiling, interacting, being totally normal, if I wasn't ready to talk about those things on stage, I wouldn't, but they still do the, like you said, the head tilt and the, like, that was really powerful. And I'm like, no, it was some jokes. Like, can we, like, I wasn't here. You are seeing me through a lens that is not real, and it's very frustrating.
But I will throw this back to you. I will throw it back in so much that I've worn my grief on my sleeve. I literally did performative grief by doing a one-woman show about it, much like I'm hearing that you brought it to the stage as well to share. Mm-hmm. And I think the thing that I'm hearing is that you're also a fellow wizard in so much that the muggles don't know how to talk about this shit.
True.
Right? And like, I think what you're doing is brave in a sense that like the muggles are just like, how can you talk about your feelings like that and not be afraid of what's going to come back to you? Like, you're making yourself vulnerable. You are saying some real shit and not just like, how about coffee? Oh my God. Like, like you're not just Seinfelding up there at people. Like you're saying some real stuff and it's landing. Thank you for that. I'll be here all week. But you know what I mean? Like, I think because we are wizards, and by that I mean, we're on a different level. Like, I'm sorry, normies. I'm sorry, muggles. But like, we've seen some shit. We've fought Voldemort, and we can see the Thestrals. Like, we're fucking wizards. Anybody who deep dives and understands everything I just said, high five.
I have no idea what you're talking about, but carry on.
I'm sorry. You're a different kind of wizard.
Okay, thank you.
Like, we get it, and that I think there are people who want to be able to speak so authentically without the fear of the stigma and the fear of being called out, of like, well, what do you actually mean? Like, I don't know, like there's something real there, and they see it. They might not understand it, but they know that they've come close to something authentic. And like, in a world where there is Photoshop and like all of this like marketing, and like you're saying, the movies telling us how to be, they're seeing a real person. They're seeing actual Melanie up there telling about her actual life, and she's brave enough to make a joke about it. Holy shit, that's brave.
Yeah.
And and it's taking away, like, I mean, talk about the way you're dealing with grief, and there's a stigma around how people should deal with grief, and it's no different with mental illness. And how I can relate is if I tell people that I have bipolar disorder, there is a head tilt.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes there's a head tilt and a giant step back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and it's the same kind of, well, this is actually not a big deal to me. This is my reality, and this is what I'm dealing with, and this is how I'm dealing with it. But people want you to act a certain way or perform in a certain way because that's what they think mental illness looks like.
Yeah,
or
if
that's
you're
what
not
they think grief looks like.
if
right?
you're not like eating Gilbert grape or some bullshit, it's just like
Well, exactly. And I have had, and Adri, you know this, I've had people say, geez, you don't look bipolar.
yeah, yeah.
Right. Oh, interesting. Well, what does that look like? But it's very similar to what you're talking about with grief. People expect you to perform in such a way that can make them either A, feel good about themselves, or B, make them comfortable. So
Yes,
you're
very much
supposed
the
to make
second.
me feel comfortable about your loss.
Yes, very much the second.
And death is such it. I found that was something that I found through this experience because I'd experienced death before, but never of someone who I knew as well or spoke to as regularly or was as close to as my mom. So I'd never experienced that profound loss. And I do feel we're talking about distancing, but then on the flip side of the coin, it does kind of initiate you into this club where there are people who totally get it, and you can send someone a message of like a really, like I have a friend where I can like make a really dark joke about death because she's been there and she sees it and she gets it. And I think I probably responded the same way everyone else does when someone told me about profound loss, because I'd never experienced it and I didn't know how to react. And now it's like I've been initiated into this like dark club where you're like, okay, like it's funny because death is it's something we're all going to do. It's the only thing we're all going to for sure do. And yet we all tiptoe around it in such a way. And I feel like now that I've been through it, I see no reason to tiptoe around it, because it's like, that's reality. And I see that now and I understand it and I've been there and I'm ready to talk about it. And I do get that there's other people that wouldn't be ready to talk about it because it's such a big question mark.
It's so scary. The unknown is so scary, and the finality of it is so scary, because everything about our lives is like being young and youthful and vibrant and busy and all that stuff, and then
all the time in the world, right?
Yeah, especially in the movies.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
like
exactly.
they never show you, like they just kind of like pan up and go to credits, and it's like, but they live the rest of their life, man.
Yeah.
It's just like, but what about that part? What about when Cinderella and Prince Charming get a divorce?
Yeah. What about
right? Like,
the everydayness of it? I have a friend, Christine Maitland, who's writing she has a blog called The Many Black Histories, and she said, it's a Black history blog, but she said she's tired of how in the movies it's always either triumph or trauma. And it's never just the everydayness. Like, how did these people live? How do they interact? What does a typical morning routine look like? You know, just all this kind of like, when does this person have a boring day? And I do think that the movies are heading in that more authentic direction.
Celebrating the mundane a little bit more, maybe.
Yeah. And I dig that, because it's like, you know, when I think pop culture has this enormous effect on us, and how could it not? Because it's what we're absorbing all the time, whether consciously or unconsciously. And when it is only ever that trauma or that triumph, you can feel a little like you can't compare, or you can't stack up, or your emotions can't stack up.
Yeah. And again, to bring it to like the mental health, like it makes me think of like our system, that we only think about crisis. We never think about prevention, and we never think about the fallout and the post, that we're always focused on the trauma. And I think that,
just the living with. We don't think about just the living with it, just the day-to-day living with it.
Exactly.
You know, I don't have to call a hotline every day, you know, just to exist. Right?
Yeah.
And just like, the casualness of I'm not able to work with saran wrap. I'm going to have a panic attack about goddamn saran wrap. And like, how do I even unpack that literally and figuratively? Fuck you, saran wrap. It, and like, yeah, that mundane thing of the everyday, and that I totally live in that. And it's the vibration of like how amped I am every day that I kind of have to navigate that we don't really talk about.
Yeah.
And then there's grief. And then grief. I really like your starch analogy, because to me that meant to me that, like, yeah, in grief I found and find that it's not that you're, like how you said, like, it's not that you're not happy, and it's not that you're not sad or whatever. It's that it's thicker. And that for me, I feel like it got deeper. Like my happiness was more extreme and my sadness was more extreme. And that's how I kind of heard your starch analysis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything felt way deeper. I likened it to like a mushroom trip where I was like, anytime someone like reached out, like I can be kind of curmudgeonly, I can be kind of picky, like you've heard this, where I'm like, this I have to deal with this person's reaction. But like, there's also the fact that when I saw the outpouring of support and all the messages I got, like I really felt it. And usually, like, you know, it's your birthday, everyone's like, happy birthday. You're like, yeah, thanks so much. But like this was really like, I felt people's love for me. I felt the connection I had. So it's like you said, the happiness was deeper, and the sadness was deeper. But I was just I was so surprised and so, yeah, delighted by how much deeper, like, I was like, oh, because I've had this profound experience, I have so much more an appreciation for the life that I'm living right now and the people that I do have around me right now. And yeah, it was an interesting feeling to have, that like everything just feels that much more profound. And it's never like, I tried to read about grief, and everything I could find was just like, it's sad, and it's sad every day, and you wake up and you're sad, and you go to bed and you're sad. And I was like, really? Because like I was seeing, like, I felt very like scrubbed clean. Like I was seeing things, I was like taking walks and seeing things as more beautiful than I'd ever seen them. Like I was just so fully present, because I think um as much as we talked about checking out, the after effects were really really feeling present in those little things, like really feeling those little things, and not in the anxious way I was feeling them before, but in a really like, oh wow, I'm going to be really grateful for the nice things people are doing, or yeah, gratitude,
or for that Starbucks coffee.
Yeah. I love my
enjoying your coffee, you know?
Little things.
Yeah, enjoying your coffee, enjoying like a day. I used to, like, when I was working a bunch and doing a bunch of shows, I would really like live for my days off, but in this really anxious way. Like I'd be like, oh my God, it's Saturday. That means I've got to relax really hard. And I would like get mad at like anyone who's getting in the way of that relaxation, because this is my one day. And now it's like, okay, just be present. Like what's like just being able to actually enjoy the day, rather than like, all right, these are the surface things I do to be able to tell myself that I had a good day yesterday. Yeah, really sinking into reality in a way I never had before. Really sinking into the moment.
That's beautiful.
I love it.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it. Is there a place that if our listeners wanted to hear more of your story, if they could like follow you or find you or high five you?
So I'm posting mostly very silly things right now.
Yes.
But you can find me. I post everything, all my funny stuff, on my Instagram at Sugar Dahling, Dahling. And like I'm on Facebook too, but I'm more active on the Instagram. I post funny stuff on there. And I have a podcast. We're figuring out how to do remote recording right now, but I have a podcast called Tarts and Craft, and it's about witchcraft.
What?
Yeah, so we talk about like we identify as witch curious individuals, and and we approach it from that beginner standpoint where I think right now everyone's really curious about alternative ways to feel spiritual because the powers that be have let us down a little bit.
Mm.
So we talk a little bit about like we talk about history, famous witches, what does this symbol mean? Why are goats the devil? All that good stuff. Um, and yeah, that's what I'm up to right now. I haven't done a ton of stuff with a ton of grief specific projects yet, but I don't know. I'm thinking about it. Road, if you want something silly or something witchy, those are the things you can check out.
That sounds pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for sharing your story.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks, Melanie.
Thanks for listening. If you want to join the conversation, and we hope you do, come find us on Twitter and Facebook, and you can subscribe on YouTube. That's it, Stigma Fighters. And remember, your story isn't over yet, and we want to hear it.